quickly over the slides that we've got here. Sorry. So the program is offered across St. George and UTM campuses currently, with plans to establish the Scarborough Academy of Medicine at the Scarborough campus by 2026, allowing students to take part in learning throughout one of the world's most diverse urban environments. And during our expansion phase, a limited number of supernumerary spaces are allocated to specific international and military training programs that have contractual arrangements with the university. Next slide, Kayla. So we do offer two degree options, the MD program, which is our 4-year degree, and the MD PhD program, which can take upwards of 8 years, depending on the student's PhD research interest. And students are able to apply through either the general MD application program or one of our other optional programs, which do require supplementary application documents. So there's the Indigenous Student Application Program for students that self-identify as First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. The Black Student Application Program for Canadian students, for Canadian citizens rather, and permanent residents who self-identify as Black and have or identify with their Black ancestry. The MD PhD program are for students that are considering a career as a clinician scientist. As I mentioned, there is supplementary material that will be required for each of these application programs. For the ISAP and BSAP programs, they would need to submit an essay discussing their connection to the community and the reasons they're applying through this particular pathway. And for the ISAP applicants, they would need to also provide their proof of ancestry. For students that are applying through the MD PhD application program, there are a number of documents that they would need to submit. So this is a concurrent admissions process. They would be considered for both the MD and the MD PhD program. For the MD PhD application, they'd be provided an essay indicating their interest in the MD PhD program, as well as an academic CV and additional references that are related specifically to their research experience and interest. Next slide. So our program is offered across a very well-connected clinical network, which is which does offer a lot of first in Canada clinical experiences for our students. How the program is structured, it's 4 academies across the 2 sites, and the academies serve as a clinical home within the larger program, providing our students with a supportive and practical environment for their medical education. And in terms of the academy structure, each academy is affiliated with a cluster of hospitals. For example, our Mississauga Academy of Medicine at Mississauga is affiliated with Trillium Health Partners and so on. The academies really provide accessibility and exposure to diverse communities and clinical settings, ensuring that our students have exposure to a wide range of patient populations and clinical scenarios. Regardless of the academy that students are assigned to, or the different educational settings based on the clinical network, they will be having the same curriculum and training across the academies. Next slide. So we do have 2 applicant profiles, dependent on whether they're an undergraduate or a graduate applicant. For students, and specifically for students in the US that are considered in our program, we do require completion of a non-medical bachelor's degree, which is equivalent to a 4-year bachelor's degree in Canada. If they are a graduate applicant, we do require that they will be completing their graduate degree by June 30th in the proposed year of entry. So someone that is considering entry into the program in 2025 would need to have completed their degree requirements by this June 30th. All of the requirements in terms of prerequisite courses are the same for both undergraduate and graduate applicants, and we do require two full course equivalents in life sciences and a full course equivalent in a social science, humanities, or language course. And a full course equivalent for us is defined as a course that runs the entire academic year, so from September to April, or they can combine two semester courses to satisfy the requirements. The minimum undergraduate GPA based on a 4.0 scale is 3.6 for undergraduate applicants and 3.3 for graduate applicants. And we do, there is a conversion for all universities, even across Ontario. So there is a conversion tool used by our application service that converts all transcripts to the 4.0 scale. The MCAT requirement for us is a threshold requirement, meaning once you've satisfied the score that we're asking for, that that score would not be looked at any further in the admissions process in assessing the file. And we're asking for 125 in each of the sections with an allowance for 124. So someone scoring between 499 and 500 on the MCAT would have met that threshold. There is an optional academic explanations essay, and that's for applicants that may have had any sort of extenuating circumstances that impacted their academic performance. They are allowed to submit an essay up to 250 words to ask for consideration. That essay is adjudicated prior to or committee actually looking at the applicant's file, and based on what they decide, there may be a partial or no adjustments to that applicant's file based on the information that is provided. That being said, with the academic explanation essay, if they do receive any sort of adjustment, they do need to meet the minimum undergraduate requirement, GPA requirements, in order to move forward to a file review. There's also a non-SAS disability accommodation request that we offer for students that may have had an unaccommodated or partial accommodation for a disability during their undergraduate studies. And it does require documentation from a health practitioner. And this particular request is adjudicated by professionals that are by disability accommodation professionals. Next slide, please.
Can I just ask one follow-up question while we're on this?
Yes, absolutely.
So for students who are graduate students who also did their undergrad maybe in the United States that are below that 3.6, are you considering both of those GPAs, or are you just strictly considering their master's or PhD level GPAs?
So it's the assessment is based on their undergraduate GPA. So for a graduate applicant, we do recognize that they've gone on to advanced studies. So we reduce the minimum GPA requirement to 3.3. And there is some academic enhancement based on the type of graduate program they've completed and the progress that they are. So it's on a sliding scale from a PhD that's been completed to a course-based master's completed.
Okay, I see that here. Thank you.
No worries. And as you know, medical school is a holistic application review. So we're also considering the non-academic piece of the student profile. And we are assessing that portion of the application based on the attribute cluster. And this is essentially attributes, characteristics that we think are indicative of a student's preparedness for medical school and a career in healthcare and medicine. So we're looking for evidence of things like professionalism, scholarship, advocacy, communication, etc. And we're assessing that on these three elements. So the autobiographical sketch, which is a list of activities and accomplishments from the age of 16, leading up to the time that they submit their application. From that list, they're asked to select one activity or accomplishment and speak about that in a little bit more detail. So really, the exercise is meant to be reflexive rather. So they're really thinking about what they've done, how that sort of impacted them and prepared them for a career in medicine. And again, we're assessing that based on the cluster here. And then each year we provide essay prompts on topical issues. So those are 2 brief personal essays up to 250 words. This last cycle, we had a question regarding AI in medicine. So it's really not meant to be a test or anything like that. It's really, again, for reflection in terms of the responses that they're given. There's no right or wrong answer for these particular essays. And then 3 references. Each reference will be given a confidential assessment form. So it's a standard form that they have to complete. It's not a free form reference letter that they're providing. There are specific questions that they're asked to respond to, really around assessing the candidate's readiness for medical school. And we recommend one academic, a non-academic, and another referee of their choosing for this portion. We do recognize that you might, as a student, they might not be able to hit all of the 4 attributes in a single piece. So across all of these elements entirely, the admissions committee, when assessing their file, should be able to see clearly across all 3, that they've hit some of these components in their responses. Next slide. So in terms of the application timeline, we're actually now wrapping up this past application cycle and getting ready to launch for 2025. So the application opens in July. We use an application platform called OMSAS, which is the Ontario Medical School Application Service, and they facilitate the application for all of the 6 medical schools in Ontario. This is where applicants will be creating their profile and submitting the documents that I mentioned earlier and other requirements. The application deadline closes on the 1st of October each year at 4:30 p.m. And then there's a secondary release deadline for their MCAT scores. This is a step that applicants often forget to complete. And if we don't receive the MCAT score, unfortunately, that file would be deemed incomplete. In early November, we started an application screening of the files. As I mentioned before, they're checking to see that the required material has been received. They want to confirm that applicants have met the MCAT threshold. They're looking at the GPA competitiveness. So an undergraduate applicant, we want to make sure they have that minimum 3.6. For a graduate applicant, we're looking for 3.3 on their undergraduate GPA. If those GPAs have not been met, then we're looking to see if they've submitted the supplementary material, which is the academic explanation essay or the OMSAS disability, to see if there was some reason there why they've not met that threshold with the GPA. And depending on what those requests are, once those have been adjudicated, we move into a more detailed file review. And in that file review, we're looking more closely at the ABS and their statements, the brief personal essays, and we're checking to make sure that appropriate references have been submitted. At this stage, the file review is really a significant piece, but once we've gotten past the file review, we would determine the rank score and we move on to invitations. The file review becomes 33% of their overall score. So it's used only to sort of rank who will be invited to interview at that stage. And once they get to the interview stage, the interview becomes more significantly weighted in the decision process. And as I mentioned before, we're getting close to offer day. So offer day is second week of May each year. And that's again based on file review and interview score. Next slide. So that's it. If you wanted to grab my email, if you want to, send students our way for additional questions, and that's our website address as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to leave this up for 1 second while I figure out how to nicely switch my screen. which isn't gonna work. Okay. All right. Thank you, Twana. And now I'm going to pass the torch to Catherine from the University of British Columbia. Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
All right, let me get your slides here. Okay, great. And then there you go.
Wonderful. So thank you so much. My name is Catherine McCall. I'm the Associate Director for MD Admissions at the University of British Columbia's MD program. I'm just going to talk to you mostly about the admissions process and some brief information. So yeah, if you can go to the next slide, Kayla. Okay. So we have a distributed medical program as well. There are 328 positions in the first year class, and it is distributed to all of these locations. So the IMP is the Island Medical Program. It's located in Victoria. SMP is the Southern Medical Program. It's located in Kelowna, which is the BC interior. The NMP is the Northern Medical Program, which is in Prince George, in the north of our province. And the Vancouver Fraser Medical Program is our largest site and is located in the Vancouver Fraser area. So there are 40 positions in each of the IMP, NMP, SMP, so 120 total. And then the remaining 208 positions are at the Vancouver Fraser Medical Program. Of those, we do have a cohort inside the Vancouver Fraser Medical Program that is designated for the Fraser region because we have multiple health authorities in our province. And so a number of students will be given admission to specifically this site where they will, while they're in the Vancouver Fraser Medical Program, they will spend their third year clinical clerkship experience inside the Fraser region, which is located kind of a little bit of a distance from Vancouver. So truly a program that is distributed all across the province. In terms of admission, so next slide, please. These are some of the basic requirements. We do have multiple pathways, and I haven't put the slide in there regarding all of the pathways, but for the general admissions stream, you need 90 university transferable credits by April 30th of the year of entry. So essentially that means you need 3 years of undergraduate education to gain entry into our program. So regardless of how credits work, essentially it's 3 years of full-time studies to be able to gain entry. If you've done part-time studies or other things, that's okay. Just need to be able to accomplish up to that credit level. And we are more than happy to consult on, how credits convert. So you know exactly how many you need. And April 30th of the year of entry means that you can apply to the program because our application opens typically in June and closes around September 15th. And you can have that full year up until the next April to complete any outstanding courses that you need to be able to accomplish this credit level. We do a percentage scale for the University of British Columbia. 75% is not the same thing in the United States as it is in Canada. And so in our context, a 75% minimum overall GPA, or we do an adjustment to the GPA calculation for BC residents, is really close to basically a B average. An 85 minimum overall is essentially an A average. So if you're not used to the percentage scales, we do have conversion tables on our website that look specifically at the letter grades and how they convert into the percentage scale. In terms of 6 credits of English, this is very similar to what Twana was talking about in terms of 2 full-time equivalents. So it's essentially 2 courses either taken at the same time or over 1 full year or in 2 different semesters, but essentially 2 English courses in an English department of a university. And then you need at least a minimum of 124 in each section of the MCAT. So there's no if you get a 123, for example, in any of the sections, unfortunately, your entire MCAT score will be not considered. There is the minimum eligibility requirement for the MCAT means that you have to meet that threshold for consideration. But the MCAT is an important component of our selection process. So we will take the highest score. It's not the most recent, the highest score that you achieve, at least the minimums in each section. Everyone does need to be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident to apply to our program. But if you are a person with refugee status in Canada, which I would assume that you are not since you are attending school elsewhere, but if you are a person with refugee status, you can show your proof of permanent residence 2 weeks to the start of class. Everyone else must have Canadian citizenship or permanent residency by the application deadline. So we also look at non-academic qualities, and we're looking in these 5 categories. So as part of the application process, you'll be asked to submit a fairly comprehensive CV. It's a structured CV. So you have to implement some very specific information, including the title of the activities that you were participating in, what your role was, and how many hours you completed that. And it allows you to give like a brief explanation of that activity. And we do provide some very detailed information inside of our help guide of exactly how to submit that information, because we are looking for what you did, not your interpretation of that experience. And so we are looking for leadership, service, capacity to work with others, diversity of experience, high performance. Leadership and service, I think, are fairly self-explanatory. Service can be shown in a variety of contexts, though. It doesn't need to be specifically volunteer service. It can be through work or other employment. It could also be through life experiences that you've had that have demonstrated your capacity. And that's similar to a capacity work with others and diversity of experience as well. So individuals will sometimes have, say, needed to care for a sibling because parents have passed away. And so they've put things like that into capacity to work with others. Or if you've had an experience that is uncommon, like you were at one point in your life a refugee, you fled like violence from another country or something like that, then sometimes individuals will put that in a diversity of experience section. And same thing for leadership. Leadership can be in very traditional environments, or it can be an employment environment, or even outside. So sometimes people will put in parenting as a leadership experience. Sometimes people will put in having been a shift supervisor for the coffee shop that they were working at, etc. And so we really ask you to think about your whole background holistically. It doesn't have to be based on any certain time period, but we do place priority on those experiences that are most recent or relevant to kind of who you are currently. So if you are including an experience from a very long time ago, it should have a significant life impact and be the reason why that you're incorporating it. High performance in an area of human endeavor is not a category that everybody has. This is really for individuals who have done one thing at an exceptional level, who have needed often to reduce their ability to perform in the other sections. So this is where our Olympians put in information about their background. If you're not an Olympian, that's completely fine. Many people are not. So don't feel as though if you have to complete this section. But if you do have some sort of ability in the arts or culture, or you've been recognized for something at an extraordinary level, please feel free to put in that high performance in an area of human endeavor section. We will also ask for research experiences, again, not because you have to have had them, but because we want to ask for specific information. And we do have a whole employment section where you can list all of your employment experiences, and we'll be looking for these same 5 qualities. At time of interview, that's when we ask for references, and we do ask for 2 references, and we're looking for similar traits here. We ask for an academic reference and for a professional or service reference. So that can be either in a volunteer or in a work experience capacity. So next slide, pre-interview, we're looking at 50% is your academics and 50% is non-academics. And academics is entirely based on GPA, and non-academics is based on that non-academic qualities profile assessment. So we do rank individuals for interview based on these two qualities. We bring more people for interview that are from inside the province. We only have 10% of our positions for applicants who are coming from out of province. And having been in province means that you have a currently active and valid BC services card for the entirety of the application cycle. So if you are originally from BC and you are still under your parents' health insurance, or you maintain that connection with BC, then you can still be considered in province. If you have never lived in BC, you would be considered as part of that out of province pool. And we have fewer positions for individuals coming from out of province. So next slide. When we interview, we do a multiple mini interview. For those of you who are unfamiliar with an multiple mini interview, it is in a virtual environment right now, but essentially involves reading a case or scenario or question. And you have a certain time period. Right now it's 2 minutes. This might deviate in future years. Then you get pulled into an interview, typically with one other person. You interact with them for 8 minutes or 7 minutes, depending on the length of time in that year, and then get moved into the next station where you read another scenario or question, formulate your thoughts, and again, move on. We do 10 stations in the multiple mini interview, and that is a significant part of that post-interview assessment. But we also are looking at all of the other aspects of your personal background and the components of the application, non-academics, academics, MCAT, etc. So these are some statistics that we've posted on our website. We will have updated statistics sometime in the near future, but as you can see, typically individuals that have a competitive opportunity are getting A's, like straight A's or A pluses. If you have gone to a school that is on the A plus scale, those are the most competitive, and then individuals in other GPAs do get admitted, but unfortunately there's fewer individuals that do get admitted every year. Other than that, our email, I thought I included it on there, and I apologize that it's not showing, but it's just admissions with an s.md@ubc.ca, and I'll type it into the chat so you can all have it. And we are more than happy to answer any questions that you have as you're thinking of applying to medical school.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Very different schools, very different ways that you're going about things, which is, I think, really important to know ahead of time. If anyone has any questions here, I know I have some advisors here as well from NAP, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask a question or put it in the chat, DM me. I do have a few questions to ask while people are typing, but if you have a question, don't be shy, raise your hand. So I know you talked a little bit about experiences specifically, but is there anything maybe students should be wary of experientially wise? So for instance, like some US schools for scribing, maybe don't weigh scribing as high of a clinical experience as other things that students can get involved in. So is there anything you really value clinically that your students get involved in versus not? And what does that look like?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that one. For UBC, we actually do not recommend that students get involved in shadowing or doing any shadowing experiences. And that's because in British Columbia, that has been discouraged by our College of Physicians and Surgeons because it kind of violates patient privacy. So if you are interested in getting involved in a clinical environment or need to do that for your US applications, we would recommend that you actually start a volunteer and volunteer in a hospital or a clinical setting. Those are the types of experiences that you can put on your application. We also have candidates that have been like medical office assistants and other things that are more in a clinical environment and an appropriate way of interacting in a clinical environment or doing clinical research, so that you have a role in that space and you're not just observing patient interactions with a physician that may or may not be what the patient would appreciate or like.
Juana, any feedback?
Absolutely. So we left the non-academic section of our application fairly broad, so there is no required activity or accomplishment that needs to be placed on the application. So for example, we've had applicants that apply that may have had a number of years in varsity sports, and that kind of experience, for example, can speak to professionalism, communication, collaboration, etc. So we really leave it fairly broad. A lot of candidates, when we're speaking to them, they ask about research, and we don't require that simply because there is really no ideal sort of experience or student profile to apply to medical school. And Catherine mentioned something about, perhaps taking care of a family member or have an employment. So all of those things are equally valid and are experiences that can really get a student thinking about how do those experiences fit into the attribute clusters that I mentioned. So it's really very broad, fairly broad, so that students are able to pursue things that they're passionate about instead of having a checklist of items that they think that we require for the admissions process.
Great, thank you. I have gotten questions from students about like timeline of MCAT, when to take it, if they have a retake scheduled for like September, October. And I know it is very strict in Canada with MCAT, minimum thresholds. Can you talk a little bit about like if a student doesn't meet those thresholds in a sectioner, and then you see that they have a retake scheduled while you're in those review times, do you push them aside and revisit? Do you not revisit? If you can even give us that information, how do you go about that?
I'll go ahead. So typically we see applicants preparing for taking the MCAT in year 2. But we have students that also go all the way up to the year that they're applying to the program. That could be in year 3 or year 4, depending on when they decide they wanted to pursue medicine. And the last date that they can actually sit an MCAT would be in the end of August, because it takes some time for us to get those results. And unfortunately, if there is no if they haven't met the MCAT threshold, and that sort of score is not released at the application deadline, they would not be considered. We wouldn't hold to wait for results to come in. It is the most recent, so it's different from Catherine. It's the most recent score at MCAT for us, not the highest.
Yeah, and we are very similar to the University of Toronto. We won't hold that application. We are, encourage applicants to take it. If they are taking undergraduate coursework that's of similar content, then, take the MCAT exam after having completed those courses. But if you're not in an undergraduate curriculum that has similar content to the MCAT, then we just recommend really studying hard for that exam, and taking it in a timeline so that the scores are in our office by the deadline, which is typically for us around October 15th.
Okay.
So usually the last MCAT exams that we'll take are end of August, early September.
Okay, great. I have a question in the chat here. So having both a US and Canadian passport, being a citizen of both countries, but never had a permanent residence in Canada, would that qualify as out of province when applying to Canadian medical schools?
So for UBC, yes, you are an out of province applicant. If you've never lived in the province of BC, but you are a Canadian citizen, you qualify for our program in that way. So that's not a problem at all.
Yes, same answer. Someone that has dual citizenship would be considered a Canadian citizen here as well. In terms of residency, I think the only impact would be in the provincial loan program. There is a criteria for that you have to be in the province for a year to be able to qualify for provincial loans.
Thank you. Okay, we have another DM. Do the schools use rolling admissions? It sounded like deadlines are real in Canada. Okay.
No
very
rolling
serious.
admissions. Yeah.
Yeah, we're very serious about our deadlines.
Yeah, there is in Ontario, there is one offer day. So it's coordinated across the 6 medical schools. They will release results on the same day for applicants.
And for the BC or for the Western schools, so any school, Manitoba and over, if you know your Canadian geography, then those schools don't have the same offer deadline, but we do have the same acceptance deadline. So usually offers will go out sometime in early May, but we'll all agree on the same date by which you need to accept the first round of offers. And we do share information with the other schools about who is accepted into our programs, because we also do things where we don't allow you to be accepted into multiple schools and save a seat in both schools. So, if you are, say, offered to the University of Toronto and to UBC and you accept both offers, you'll get a notification from us at least to say you have 24 hours to decide. You need to either withdraw that offer or we're going to withdraw you from our program. Because we are going to move on to the next person. And I'm not sure what the timeline is for you of T.
So the offer date is early May, as I'd mentioned before. It is coordinated. So once you accept the offer from one of the Ontario medical schools, all of the other medical schools that you've applied to in Ontario would be notified that you have accepted an offer. So you would be removed from that other school's list as well.
That's really good to know. We have something similar, but there's a lot of traffic rules surrounding that. It's a little hidden until this point in time. So that's good to know. Okay.
And it's not to say that you can't accept another offer. So say, for example, you got an offer from the University of British Columbia first round, and then you got another offer from University of Toronto in another time, but you would need to decline our offer and say hey, I've gotten my preferred program someplace else. Otherwise, when we see that you're holding 2 seats, then that's when we'll essentially remove you after we've notified you.
Can you talk a little bit while we're on this train about financial aid, scholarships, and how that works with when your offers come out? Is that because with US medical schools, it's they get the offer and then they have to wait until basically now to receive those packages, and then they're conversing with different schools. So what does that look like for you all?
Not with the financial aid team, but I'll just give you some high-level information regarding that. So once offers are made, our financial aid and awards team would start to contact the incoming cohort to make appointments so that they can start discussing applications for scholarships or grants, or if they've qualified for any merit awards, they're getting notified of that. So there is a whole sort of programming and sessions around that for the students. And pre-offer, we're also doing a lot of advising around financial aid. So students are advised in advance to submit an application for their provincial loan. It doesn't get released unless you're accepted, but at least there is some preliminary work that is being done as well.
Yeah, and in terms of so we have a few scholarships that go out with the offers, and then individuals are notified right away that they've received one of the entrance awards. And it's typically right with their offer of admission or a few days following. For all other bursaries or awards, and even some of the entrance awards, they are adjudicated after students are kind of enrolled in the program. So typically late July, early August, sometimes even into September. So many students won't know that they have an award or a partial funding until the beginning of school starting. But we do have a financial aid officer who's willing to work with applicants and students to talk about all of the available options and even to potentially do a preliminary look at some of the financial need to see what is available to somebody when they're coming into the program. One thing to keep in mind is that like tuition for our school is approximately 20,000 Canadian dollars a year for medical school. So often is significantly less than many US medical schools. And so that often provides a better opportunity for many individuals coming from a variety of backgrounds, regardless of whether or not you know if you've received scholarships or bursaries.
Great, thank you. Okay, I have a couple DMs here, a little specific. So I lived in Ontario before coming to the US for college, and I'm a Canadian citizen. Would I be considered an in-state or out-of-state applicant for Ontario?
So for our medical school, we would consider you an in-province applicant. And the difference in tuition is very nominal. It's not a huge difference for in province and out of province.
Great. Okay, how does the GPA conversion work? And this might be send us a link. For UBC, if for Hopkins, the grade scale for A plus and A are based on different percentages. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I will just put up, I think, the conversion scale into the chat so that you can actually look at it yourself. And then if you're confused and you're not sure like how to calculate all of this, please do email our office and we're more than happy to help you understand and learn how to calculate your own GPA, or we can potentially even help you calculate it as well.
Great. Thank you.
And I've also shared the OMSAS conversion table, so that's useful as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, I don't have any more DMs. If anyone wants to unmute themselves or raise their hand if you do have a question, I'll give you a second. You both talked about it a little bit in your presentations, but is there any, like, what would you maybe classify your identities as a medical school? Some schools here value, service or research over other certain things. Is there any sort of identities that you feel like you align with that you specifically look for in your applicants? I know you both touched on it a little bit, but maybe summing it up into a couple words.
Well, I know that U of T in general is known for research. We place a lot of value on that. So we do provide opportunities for students to get involved in research. So they don't necessarily have to be an MD, PhD student to get that kind of experience. And we do have or a summer research program that they're able to participate in. But that being said, again, I'm going to emphasize that research is not a criteria for the application. Certainly if someone has that and it enriches their application, they can put that there, but it's not something that we're looking for or require from our candidates. And really, I think what I want to emphasize is there is no ideal MD student profile. We're looking for students with diverse experiences and being able to sort of convey that in the application.
And I think UBC is known as a school that really values diversity. We are a school that is extremely dedicated to our mandate, which is to ensure that we have appropriate medical care for all populations serving in our province. And we're hoping to um, select students that are enthusiastic about engaging with a diversity of patient populations who are going to be innovative and contribute to the world around them, the community around them, as well as make an impact either provincially, nationally or globally. And so we are very serious about our social accountability, including trying to gain representation from a broad diversity of applicants. And so all aspects of our admissions process are attempting to support individuals in all walks of life in being able to demonstrate their abilities in various ways. And, if there's like an aspect of the admissions process that is confusing or where your lived experience doesn't seem to gel with the admissions process, then we're always open to trying to help support and guide applicants to be able to put themselves and their best foot forward so that the admissions committee members and the interviewers and the whole variety of folks that are going to be reading applications can really see the impact that you've made and your life experiences to hopefully be able to gain that diversity within our program.
Great. Okay, well, I don't have any more questions. So it's late on this side of the coast. I don't want to keep everybody waiting. But thank you so much for spending your evening and your afternoon with us. I really appreciate it. This is something that I think I'll speak for JHU students have been looking for a while. So I really appreciate you both joining us and giving us some unfiltered information. And I know from an advising perspective, this is definitely helpful as well. So enjoy the rest of your days and your evenings. Thank you again. And if you have any questions, anyone here, please feel free to reach out to me and I can share your contact information with them just to pass the buck along. Awesome. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.